So I don't think it was the physical elevation from the ground. I think it was the conscious elevation of his vibration. Hello and welcome back to this channel where I talk about the art of transformational teaching and speaking. And in this video I'm going to talk about how you can become really magnetic. You know, we've all seen these teachers who are extraordinary, they have extraordinary charisma, and it's like you can't take your eyes off them. So if you're a teacher, speaker, and you wonder, how could I become more, let's say charismatic or magnetic on stage? This video might give you some interesting ideas about that. And I will talk about it in a very different way, because this is a very popular topic. A lot of people make these videos, how to become more charismatic, how to get more power, become more powerful on stage and things like that. And of course, this is the same topic, but we are going to go in a very different direction, which is so much more fulfilling for you and for your audience. So, you know, charisma is really about attention. It's about people want to listen to you. You get their attention somehow, and they kind of lean forward when you speak, and it's like it's easier for you to connect with an audience. If you feel like I'm like a dry piece of wood and no one wants to listen to me, no one wants to watch me, that might be challenging if you feel that you have a life-changing message. So I want to give you some ideas about that right here in this video. You see, as you will see a lot of times when I talk about transformational teaching, it all starts with your intention. And so also here, because you might want to be more popular, more you know, become a superstar, a rock star, and you've been on stage and you feel like, wow, that was really something, and you got all these people's attention. That is the outer thing, and now people start working on their brand, they start working on their performance, body language, all sorts of outer charismatic aspects. But there is a different way that is also laid out there from the universe, and it's not something that people typically talk about, but I want to talk about it here, because when you see that way, you don't want anything else. You see, it's like you try to become a more powerful presenter. You try to reach out to people, you try to impress, you try to present, you try a lot of things, and you always looking for a new technique, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, it opens a whole new reality, a whole new way. And when you have seen that, you can't really unsee what you just saw. So I just warn you, when you watch this video, chances are that you see things in a much different way. But I can also say to you, it's a much more blessed way. And if you get it, you will be happy. So I have one of the things that or a couple of teachers that I'm deeply inspired from is Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching 2,500 years ago. A Chinese man who was so wise, and his little book called Tao Te Ching is like, it's so full of wisdom for leaders and speakers and teachers and everyone. And then 500 years later, you had a guy called Jesus, and he became the Christ. And it's one of the greatest teachers, probably the greatest teachers ever lived on the planet. Those two people, they have a very different approach to charisma, to becoming magnetic. And they actually speak about it. So I wanted to share what they say, and maybe that can give us some new ideas on how the inner path can become a light that shines out to people. So let me start with Tao Te Ching. and Lao Tzu. And this is a book, it's not a big book, but it's a book of 81 verses. And in the verse 66, he talks about this. And he uses the picture about a sea. So listen. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? You know, everyone wants to be king. Everyone wants to be the number one. Or not everyone, but you know, naturally, a lot of people admire the king. But why is the sea a king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Humility gives it its power. Therefore, those desiring a position above others must speak humbly. Those desiring to lead must follow. This is, you know, for people today, how can I get more followers? So I can lead them. Yeah, those desiring to lead must follow. Thus it is that when a sage stands above the people, they don't feel the heaviness of his weight. So you can meet people who have like this big charisma, they're bigger than life, but you feel intimidated. You feel little in their presence. I'm not saying that's all the time, but that can happen. But if you meet a sage, and I've met some of them, and they are kind of above the people, they have a position above, and they are so magnetic, but you don't feel the heaviness of their weight. And when he stands in front of people, they do not feel hurt. They feel embraced. You see that? So if you try to become the best, try to become a powerhouse on stage, and you can learn every technique to attract people's attention and to convince them, persuade them, and everything. And you can become so good that people feel distance, and they don't feel loved. They don't feel like that you hold them. They might admire you, but it's still distance. But this guy says, the sage stays low, so the world never tires of exalting him. And this is a big secret. The sage stays low, so the world never tires of exalting him. He remains a servant, so the world never tires of making him its king. You see, humility gives it its power. This is a big secret, and it's so counterintuitive for many people, because they think that if I become the best, if I become number one, if I become someone that people can look up to, that will be attraction. But he points to the different direction. Go down, become humble, go lower in your spirit. Humility. And now the effect of that is that it becomes an attraction. The world never tires of exalting him. He remains a servant, and that's not always easy, because when sometimes people they start there, and then they get the attention, and people want to support and they want to help, and they give you a lot of praise. But the sage, he remains a servant, and the world never tires of making him its king. And he says at another place here, the sage, this is verse number 49, the sage has no fixed mind. He is aware of the needs of others, and they change all the time, right? So, I have my goal. Yeah, I'm going to reach my goal. I'm going to manifest to become the best teacher, the best speaker. But the sage doesn't think about that. He thinks, he wants to be aware of the needs of others, and then he remains a servant. And then later down this verse he says, he sees everything as his own self. he loves everyone as his own child. So he feels like, I'm doing this for them, for me. It's like everything I meet. And then, you know, what happens then? It's connection. Because if you see people like the others, other people, my followers, my, you know, customers for that sake, it's distance, right? But the sage doesn't do that. He sees everything as his own self. He loves everyone as his own child. And he also says here, he is faithful to the faithful. He's also faithful to the unfaithful. And the cool thing is that this sentence is quoted in the New Testament 500 years later. The sage live in harmony with all below heaven. All people are drawn to him. He behaves like a little child. What's that? That means that he smiles to everyone. He's not in a competition. And you know, what is one of the most attractive things on the planet? Is that a newborn baby, right? You stroll down the street with your little baby and you attract people. Wow, let me see your baby. So all people are drawn to that. But a baby is not in a competition, never. Baby doesn't make a difference with people. It smiles to everyone, unless it's hungry. I'll read the final verse here, or some part of it. This is the 35th verse of Tao Te Ching. All men come to him who keeps the one. They flock to him and receive no harm. For in him they find peace, security, and happiness. Very different than feeling intimidated and hurt, and feeling that the pressure of the weight of the big guy. So all men will come to him. This is magnetism. This is attraction. Who keeps the one. And the one is always inside. That is the truth. That is the pure intention. They flock to him and they receive no harm. For in him they find peace, security, and happiness. So you see, Lao Tzu, he points to a whole different way of becoming a leader, to becoming a magnet to people. He says, you want to go inside. You want to go below. You want to become a servant. You don't want to have a fixed mind on your own goals. No, you want to be aware of the others. And then you serve with love. That creates an enormous attraction. So now it's like a sea down there. All these 100 streams are coming to that sea. And it's like people are drawn to it. They flock around you. So if you're fed up about trying to become more persuasive, trying to become more charismatic, trying to build your brand so that people can admire you, this is the way. And now, 500 years later, Jesus came forth as one of the greatest, or possibly for me, the greatest teacher ever. And he said, I don't have the Bible in English, so I can't read it here for you, but I would love to. But he said once, when I am lifted from the ground, I will draw all people to me. And that was, it's a strange thing to say, when I'm lifted from the ground. And then later on, the disciples understood that he talked about the crucifixion. He was like lifted on the cross. And people read that and they say, that's, the miracle on the cross. But there is a deeper understanding there that people miss, because they think it was the crucifixion in itself that was a big thing. So I want you to listen to this story and how it unfolded, because there is a deeper secret there that, if you really can understand, you can understand the greatest magnetism, the greatest thing ever, for teachers. What he really talks about is not charisma. He talks about grace. And that's the same for Lao Tzu, because charisma is, I admire you, I'm like fascinated about you. But grace is like a light that attracts people. They want to have that light. It feels like something is soothing their soul, something is healing their heart. And that is a whole different thing. That is not persuasion. That is, that is a gift to other people in their need. So when I am lifted from the ground, I'll draw all people to me. What happened when he was lifted from the ground? That was above the gravity. So here's the thing, it's a paradox, because imagine this, you're then nailed to a cross, nails through your hands, your legs, people push sword into your belly, and it's, you're bleeding, and the water from your belly is flushing out here, or dripping out, I don't know. It wasn't that cool situation for Jesus. And remember this also, Jesus was a very popular guy. It was like he speak without any loudspeakers for 5,000 people. Think about that. If you were out somewhere and there were 5,000 people in front of you wanted to listen to you, he was a really big attraction in Israel, and his message was powerful. So now he comes into Jerusalem, and all the people celebrate him, and he's like the most popular guy, right? Palm leaves, can you say that? I don't know, but branches celebrated him, Hosanna, David's son, and they made a big party when he came in. And 1 week later, they had turned towards him, and now they wanted to crucify him. And that must have been he was crucified as a criminal, even though he was not. So it must have been quite a challenging situation for him. And here is, but maybe someone had remembered, when I am lifted from the ground, I will draw all people to me. So they knew that there might be a miracle here. And here's what happened. It wasn't that he was crucified, like he died. It was what happened on that cross. And there are a couple of things that happened. And one of them was, imagine this, you're hanging there, you're dying, and then you have two other people, and they're real criminals on your left and right side. And they start talking to you. And what he does, he could have said, guys, I have more enough with my own pain right now. I don't want to speak. But he rised above that. He lifted his spirit above that gravity of pain. And he said, he invited, especially the one who wanted to listen to him, he said, today you're going with me to paradise. It's like, you think about that. You're in that situation and you can say that. He liberated his own spirit from the physical world and the physical situation, and he kind of raised his vibration. That is his true ascension. He raised his vibration in that moment, and he was able to invite this guy to paradise. The more you think about that situation, the more you see how powerful that is. Most people would not be able. They would be full of fear, scared to death, and so full of pain and absorbed in their own trouble. But he was not. He said today he rose up, he lifted. So I don't think it was the physical elevation from the ground. I think it was the conscious elevation of his vibration. Because the gravity said, oh, you're so full of pain, you're dying, all the hope is over, your mission is not maybe completed. Who knows what he could think. But he rose above those feelings and that reality, and he went in, he ascended into a new reality. That must have been powerful. And also, next thing is, you should think that he could have defended himself there, or at least given them a few last messages, said, you guys were wrong, you're crucifying someone who has done nothing wrong, and you will regret. That could have been his last words. But instead, and maybe if he was pain and anger, he would have done that. But again, he rose above. He elevated his spirit to a degree that he could look at them. And in that moment, the very people who 1 week before celebrated him as the greatest guy and now wanted to crucify him as a criminal, he looked at them and he found compassion. Isn't that a true miracle? So he looked at these people who just nailed him to a cross and waited for his death, and he said, Father, forgive them. He didn't want them to suffer for the rest of their life because they did that. He just said, Father, God, universe, forgive them, because they don't know what they do. He could see that they, in their zealous way of defending their religion, now thought they did the right thing. So he forgave and he asked God, forgive them. That is such a victory, because most people who suffer from other people's actions, they would blame, or they would say, you're going to regret this, or they would maybe say, I forgive you, but you shouldn't have done it, or whatever they would say. And if he had said that, he would be just another martyr who died an unrighteous death. But because he were able to forgive in the deepest pain, in the very last hour, the darkest hour of his life, the rest of the history will remember that. He did not fall down to that gravity of the earth and what happened. He lifted his spirit. And then at the very end, here's the finest act he did. After he said that, the scripture says, he gave up his spirit. Think about the words. He gave up his spirit. So he surrendered. He surrendered to the omnipresent God who had never left him. So that is a way. And because of that, people for the rest of history, they find peace, happiness, forgiveness. It could have been so different. So when you speak to people, that is your possibility. That is, be humble, go the Lao Tzu way. And it's so contradictory to all the wisdom in the world. When you do that, you become a true magnet, and your charisma is now transcended into grace. It's the light from your inner being coming out to people, blessing them. It's your love that heals people because you were able to lift yourself instead of being in the physical world and acting like normal people would. So I hope that gave you something. Go that path, and you will be blessed, and your audience will be blessed and healed, and you become a space that can hold people in suffering and heal people. And isn't that what you want to? So that was my little, it's Sunday today, so my little Sunday talk here from the park.